While millions of faithful believers around the world think they are contributing to a spiritual work, a cause greater than themselves, something silent and far more earthly is moving behind the scenes. In Ireland, between 2023 and 2024, 3 new million-dollar companies quietly emerged. They were not startups. They were not the product of innovation or entrepreneurship. They were created by one of the most secretive religious organizations on earth, the Jehovah's Witnesses. Investment companies with biblical names, discreet addresses, and executives trained in global banking, handling millions of euros with corporate precision. But this raises a chilling question. Why would a religion that claims to be neutral, humble, and separate from the world of business be establishing financial corporations in a European tax haven? This investigation exposes the layers of a structure hidden in plain sight, a vast network where faith becomes capital and devotion turns into profit. For decades, Jehovah's Witnesses have been known for their door-to-door preaching, their refusal of blood transfusions, and their strict moral codes. They have preached detachment from worldly wealth and condemned materialism as a snare of Satan. Yet, behind this spiritual facade operates a highly organized financial machine, built with the same precision as any multinational corporation, one that moves money across borders, manages assets, and avoids taxation through carefully designed entities. What we're about to reveal challenges the very image the Watchtower has built over more than a century. The image of a humble, apolitical, and spiritually focused organization. The story begins far from New York, in a quiet coastal town in County Wicklow, Ireland. There, hidden among ordinary businesses and narrow streets, corporate documents tell a story the leadership would rather the rank-and-file members never discover. A story written not with ink and parchment, but with legal filings, banking signatures, and digital transfers worth millions. A story that transforms the widow's mite into a portfolio of international assets. And a story that may finally reveal how the world's most spiritually neutral religion mastered the language of money. The revelation of the companies. Between 2023 and 2024, 3 new entities were officially registered in Wicklow, Ireland, the local headquarters of the Jehovah's Witnesses branch. The names: Mina Asset Management Limited registered in 2023, Mina Treasure Service Limited also in 2023, and Lepta Payment Solution Limited registered in 2024. All with direct connections to the organization's worldwide structure, and all publicly registered, accessible in official databases. At first glance, they appear to be small companies. But a closer analysis shows that these are corporate financial arms created to manage millions of euros, resources coming from properties, contributions, and donations from around the world. These are not simple administrative offices or service companies for internal use. These are sophisticated financial instruments designed to maximize returns and minimize tax obligations. The registration documents reveal fascinating details. Each company was incorporated with specific purposes clearly outlined in their Articles of Association. Mina Asset Management Limited was established with broad powers to acquire, hold, and dispose of assets of all kinds. Mina Treasure Service Limited was structured to provide financial services and treasury management. Lepta Payment Solution Limited was created specifically to process electronic payments and donations. What makes this particularly significant is the timing. Why would an organization that has existed for over a century suddenly need 3 new financial companies in Ireland within just 2 years? The answer lies in a global reorganization of the Watchtower's financial structure, one that has been quietly taking place across multiple countries simultaneously. Ireland is not an isolated case. Similar corporate structures have been established in other jurisdictions known for their favorable business climates. But Ireland holds a special position in this network, serving as a European hub for financial operations that span continents. The names Mina and Lepta evoke passages from Scripture. The mina was a measure of gold and silver used in Jesus' parables, particularly the parable of the 10 minas found in the Gospel of Luke. In that story, a nobleman entrusts his servants with minas before leaving on a journey, expecting them to invest and multiply the money. The lepta was the widow's mite, the small coin offered by a poor widow, which Jesus praised as the greatest gift because it represented everything she had to live on. This story appears in the Gospel of Mark and has become the ultimate symbol of humble, sacrificial giving. But here, these spiritual symbols have been transformed into corporate brands. Behind the sacred appearance hide companies created to move fortunes. The contrast is striking. an organization that exhorts its faithful to live with simplicity, to reject materialism, to avoid the pursuits of this world, yet it administers millions under names that invoke biblical humility. This is not merely ironic. It represents a sophisticated form of spiritual marketing. By choosing these specific biblical references, the organization creates an aura of righteousness around what are essentially profit-driven financial operations. When a faithful Jehovah's Witness hears the name Lepta Payment Solution, they might feel reassured that their contributions are being handled in a spiritually appropriate manner. The name itself serves as a form of religious branding that discourages questioning or scrutiny. Consider the psychological impact of these choices. A member donating through Lepta Payment Solution might feel they are emulating the faithful widow, giving their all to God's organization. They would not imagine that this same payment system is part of a sophisticated financial network designed to optimize cash flow and minimize transaction costs on a global scale. The symbolism becomes even more pointed when we examine the parable of the minas more closely. In that story, the servants who successfully invested and multiplied their master's money were rewarded, while the one who simply preserved it was condemned. Is the Watchtower seeing itself as the faithful servant, multiplying resources through investment? If so, this contradicts decades of teaching that warned members against pursuing wealth and storing up treasures on earth. None of these new ventures is commanded by elders, Bethelites, or common volunteers. The boards of directors are composed of elite professionals, former employees of institutions like UBS in Switzerland and Standard Bank in Africa. These are people accustomed to dealing with investments, stocks, and international funds. People who command six-figure salaries in the corporate world and bring decades of experience in wealth management. This confirms a silent transformation. The Watchtower no longer operates merely as a religion but as a spiritual multinational with headquarters in various countries, million-dollar assets, and global tax strategies. The days when the organization was run entirely by spiritually minded volunteers are long gone, replaced by a hybrid model where religious devotion meets financial expertise. Take, for example, the typical profile of these executives. Many hold advanced degrees in finance, accounting, or business administration from prestigious universities. They have worked for decades in the financial sector, navigating complex regulatory environments and managing vast portfolios. These are not people who stumbled into their positions through religious devotion alone. They were recruited specifically for their financial acumen. The organization defends this approach by arguing that managing billions of dollars in assets requires professional expertise. They point out that even in biblical times, there were treasurers and financial administrators. But this argument overlooks a crucial distinction. Those biblical administrators were managing resources for clearly defined charitable purposes, not creating complex corporate structures in tax havens. What happens when these financial professionals, trained in the ruthless efficiency of modern capitalism, apply their skills to a religious organization? The result is what we're seeing in Ireland, a sophisticated financial apparatus that operates according to the logic of profit maximization rather than spiritual principles. Moreover, there's a troubling disconnect between the lifestyle encouraged for ordinary members and the corporate culture at the highest levels. Regular Jehovah's Witnesses are told to simplify their lives, avoid higher education, work part-time if possible to focus on preaching, and trust that Jehovah will provide. Meanwhile, the organization itself is employing some of the most highly educated financial minds available, using strategies that would make any hedge fund manager proud. Why Ireland? The choice of Ireland was not accidental. The country is known for its lenient tax laws and for allowing discrete financial structures, the same reasons that attract giants like Google, Apple, and Facebook. Ireland offers a corporate tax rate of just 12.5%, among the lowest in Europe. More importantly, it provides legal frameworks that allow companies to shift profits between jurisdictions, minimizing overall tax burden. For an organization that teaches its members that the world is in the power of the wicked one, the use of the same strategies as major corporations raises an uncomfortable question. If the world is so condemned, why imitate it with such precision? Why adopt the exact same tax optimization strategies that have made Ireland controversial in international taxation debates? Ireland has become infamous as a corporate tax haven. The term double Irish referred to a tax arrangement that allowed multinational corporations to route profits through Ireland to eliminate or greatly reduce their tax obligations. While that specific loophole was closed in 2015, Ireland remains an extremely attractive location for companies seeking to minimize their tax burden legally. The Watchtower's use of Ireland fits a broader pattern. The organization has consistently sought out jurisdictions with favorable tax treatment and minimal regulatory oversight. This is not limited to Europe. Similar arrangements exist in various countries around the world, creating a network of interconnected corporate entities that can move money and assets with remarkable flexibility. But there's a deeper irony here. Jehovah's Witnesses are taught to be no part of the world, to remain separate from worldly systems, and to avoid entanglement with commercial interests. Yet the organization's financial operations are deeply embedded in the very systems they claim to reject. They benefit from the same legal structures, the same tax advantages, and the same financial instruments as the multinational corporations they criticize in their publications. Consider also the optics of this situation. When ordinary members learn that their contributions are being managed through companies registered in a tax haven, using strategies designed to minimize tax obligations, how does this align with the teaching that Christians should render to Caesar what is Caesar's? Is the organization rendering to Caesar, or is it using sophisticated legal strategies to render as little as possible? The choice of Ireland also raises questions about transparency. Irish corporate law does allow for a degree of privacy in business operations that would not be possible in other jurisdictions. Financial statements do not need to be as detailed, and ownership structures can be more opaque. For an organization that claims to be open and honest with its members, this preference for privacy is revealing. MENA Asset Management Limited was created to manage assets, land, real estate, vehicles, and bank accounts. There is evidence that assets sold, such as Kingdom Halls, may be being converted into financial investments, including stocks on the stock exchange. In other words, the money donated by simple faithful members may today be being multiplied in international markets. This represents a fundamental shift in how the organization operates. For most of its history, the Watchtower's wealth was tied up in physical assets, printing facilities, office buildings, and Kingdom Halls. But in recent years, there has been a massive liquidation of real estate, particularly in expensive urban markets. Dozens of Kingdom Halls have been sold, often over the objections of local congregations who built and maintained them. Where does that money go? Officially, members are told it goes toward the worldwide work, supporting missionaries and building projects in developing countries. But the existence of MENA Asset Management Limited suggests a different reality. These funds are being pooled and professionally managed as investment portfolios, generating returns that further swell the organization's coffers. The implications are staggering. When a congregation in New York or London is told their Kingdom Hall must be sold for financial reasons, and that they will now share facilities with another congregation miles away, they are participating in an asset liquidation strategy. The building they may have spent decades paying off becomes capital for investment. The local connection and community that building represented is sacrificed for financial efficiency. There is also evidence that MENA Asset Management may be involved in stock market investments. While the Watchtower has never officially disclosed its investment portfolio, documents leaked over the years suggest holdings in various corporations, including, ironically, some involved in military production and tobacco, industries the organization officially condemns. Lepta Payment Solution Limited was created to process contributions directly. The idea is to avoid the fees charged by banks on card donations. Small cents saved by each faithful member, which, added globally, can represent millions of euros saved for the organization's central fund. This might seem like a reasonable efficiency measure. Why pay credit card processing fees to banks when you can handle payments directly? But the creation of an entire company for this purpose reveals the scale of donations flowing through electronic channels. We're not talking about occasional contributions. We're talking about a steady stream of millions of transactions that justify the expense and complexity of establishing a dedicated payment processing company. Lepta Payment Solution also allows the organization to gather detailed data on donor behavior. When someone donates through a third-party payment processor, the organization receives limited information. But with their own system, they can track patterns, identify their most generous donors, and potentially target their appeals more effectively. This is standard practice in corporate fundraising, but it sits uncomfortably with claims of spiritual leadership. The company also positions the Watchtower to take advantage of emerging payment technologies. As the world moves toward digital currencies and new payment methods, having their own payment infrastructure allows the organization to adapt quickly and potentially reduce costs even further. While members are encouraged to seek first the kingdom and live with a minimum, the global leadership seems to have sought the financial kingdom. Those who donate part of their salary believing they are sustaining the preaching work are, in practice, financing an international corporate system that invests, profits, and expands like any economic conglomerate. This contradiction goes to the heart of what the organization claims to be. For decades, Jehovah's Witnesses have been taught that they are fundamentally different from other religions, particularly from what they call Christendom, the collection of mainstream Christian churches they view as corrupt and apostate. A key element of this claimed difference is that they do not pass collection plates, do not sell religious items, and do not enrich their clergy. But what we see with these Irish companies is an organization that has thoroughly embraced corporate capitalism while maintaining a facade of spiritual purity. The same organization that criticizes other churches for being too involved in worldly affairs operates a sophisticated network of financial entities designed to maximize returns and minimize costs. Consider the experience of a typical Jehovah's Witness. They might work a modest job, perhaps deliberately keeping their employment part-time so they can spend more time in the preaching work. They live frugally, as encouraged by the organization's literature. They regularly contribute to the worldwide work, perhaps setting up automatic donations from their bank account. They trust that their contributions are being used for purely spiritual purposes, printing literature, supporting missionaries, building kingdom halls in poorer countries. Now imagine that same person discovering that their contributions are being managed by former investment bankers through companies registered in a tax haven, and that some portion of their donations may be invested in the stock market. Would they feel that their trust had been honored? Or would they feel deceived? Those who criticize commercial churches now operate under identical structures, with executives, holdings, and tax optimization strategies. The very things the Watchtower condemned in others have become their own standard operating procedure. This is not just hypocrisy, it represents a fundamental betrayal of the principles the organization claims to uphold. The case of the companies in Ireland reveals an uncomfortable truth. Faith may be the public face of a machine that, behind the gates, functions like any investment company. While the faithful deposit their lepta with tears of devotion, the global headquarters administers mines of gold. Biblical names, human intentions. And in the middle of all this, one question remains. At what point did the kingdom of God transform into a financial empire? This is not a rhetorical question. It demands an answer that the leadership seems unwilling to provide. The gap between what members are told and what actually happens with their donations has never been wider. The Irish companies are just one part of a global financial network that spans dozens of countries and manages billions of dollars. Each new revelation pulls back another layer of the carefully constructed image, revealing an organization that operates more like a hedge fund than a church. The spiritual language remains, the biblical terminology continues, but the underlying reality is one of corporate consolidation, asset management, and profit optimization. For the millions of Jehovah's Witnesses around the world, these revelations pose difficult questions. Can an organization that operates this way truly be God's organization? Is it possible to reconcile these financial machinations with the teachings of Jesus, who told his followers not to store up treasures on earth? Where is the line between prudent management of resources and the pursuit of wealth that Jesus consistently condemned? The Watchtower has built its identity on being different, on being separate from the corrupt world around it. But these Irish companies tell a different story. They tell a story of an organization that has learned to play the game of global capitalism as well as any corporation, while maintaining the appearance of spiritual purity. The Widow's Mite has become a corporate brand, and the parable of the minas has become a business model. The transformation is complete. Faith has indeed become finance.